Welcome to ongoing election coverage by Town Meeting Television. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahar, and today we'll be hearing the town of Williston's budget and ballot item presentation. And we've got three guests with us today: Erik Wells, the Williston Town Manager; Terry Macaig, the Williston Selectboard Chair; and Shirley Goodell-Lackey, the Williston Finance and HR Director. So Town Meeting TV election forums introduce you to community decision makers and connect you with the issues that shape your local community. If you're watching us live, we welcome your questions. We'll take them at 802-862-3966. So feel free to call us throughout the show. And watch Town Meeting TV on Comcast channel 1087, Burlington Telecom channels 17 and 217, as well as online at Town Meeting TV's YouTube page. So I'm going to ask Terry Macaig to start us off, the Select Board Chair.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you to present the town budget for fiscal year 2021 for Williston. So as our moderator mentioned, we do have Town Manager Erik Wells with us. His first opportunity to present a budget as Town Manager, and Shirley Goodell-Lackey, our Finance Director. Thanks again to Town Meeting TV and Channel 17 for hosting this show. The dates this year for town meeting, we'll be doing a public information hearing on Monday evening, March 1st, which is our usual time for the town meeting at the school. But this year, of course, we'll be doing it by Zoom at 7 o'clock in the evening, as we usually do. And the link will be shared on the town website in the warning and on social media. On Tuesday, March 2nd, as usual, there'll be voting at the Armory from 7 in the morning until 7 p.m. by Australian ballot. And early and absentee voting is available and encouraged, and we'll be talking about a little bit more about this at the end of the show today. So today the main subject for today is the town budget, which Erik will explain in a few minutes. A little over $11.5 million, down from last year, and so that's the main consideration for this year. And so I'll pass this now over to Erik to tell you more about the general fund budget for this year, which is Article 3. So Erik.
Thanks, Terry, and good morning, everyone. Good to be here today. So when we talk about the budget, I always like to step back a little bit. And before we get into the fine details, look at what a budget is. So really, a budget's a plan. It includes the services to be provided, the cost of those services, and the revenue needed to pay for those services. And the budget is the best revenue and spending model put together with the information available. When town staff and the select board start the budget process in the fall and work through the winter, we're looking ahead for a budget that starts on July 1st to June 30th of the following year. So we're trying to anticipate what those needs are for services and what the revenue and expenses are going to look like over that period. So this year, when we went through that exercise, we unfortunately had COVID-19 as a factor to deal with as well. So it added another layer to this exercise as we put together our best budget plan for the voters to consider on town meeting day 2021. So next, I'll kind of take the high level view here at our budget. As Terry mentioned, we've got an operating budget just over $11.5 million in this proposal. This represents a reduction of just under $100,000 from its level of the FY21 budget, a 0.86% reduction in operating expenses. The projected property tax rate in this budget is level at 0.2750 cents. A reminder, the final tax rate is set in July after the grand list for the town is finalized in the spring by the listers at the assessor's office. The grand list is flat in this budget projection for our town assessor, and I'll have a little more information on that as we go through these numbers. But at this point, I'd like to toss it over to Shirley, our finance director, to drill into some of these expense side numbers a bit further. So you're up, Shirley.
Good morning. This is just a list of some of the more significant changes in our expenses this year. So wages, where wages increased 150,000 or 3.2%. We have a cost of living increase of 1.4% and a 2% merit built into the budget, which looks like it would be 3.4%, but most of that. But there's also some transfer between other expenses. So I'm going to talk about programs for a minute. You see that our programs went down 65,000. Actually, those are programming wages for the library, and we're budgeting the library a little different. So those wages are now sitting in wages and not in programming expense. So there's an increase there as well, but offset by the fact that we did have a reduction in the town clerk's office by 1 employee. And the rec department in the FY21 budget had a new full-time position slated, but with COVID, of course, and the not being able to program, that wasn't filled, and we aren't expecting to fill it now until the spring of 21. So there's a few variables in the wages that are making up that increase, but there's some decrease in there as well. So insurance is up 13.6%. And that is not health insurance, that's the town's property casualty insurance, which protects us from lawsuits, crime, cybersecurity, so all the insurance that covers the town and the town's operations. And that's just not unexpected. Many of as we see our own insurance premiums go up, that has increased for us as well. Benefits and training. So a small increase, but for benefits, we actually had a 4% increase in this is our health insurance, which is with MVP. So 4% increase, but yet we only have a 0.7% increase. So some of that relates back to the reduction in employees that I was talking about for healthcare. And also departments really looked at their training budget. So to see what we could decrease there, and some of that is impacting so the benefits increase is offset by some of the training decreases as well, and the FTE decreases. So debt service at 13.4%. So that is primarily made up by three things. First of all, back in March of 2019, the voters approved bonding of $1.4 million for 2 new fire trucks. I don't know if you remember, but with these 2 new fire trucks, and all the number of fire truck vehicles is decreased by 1. So that was approved by the voters in March of 19. It takes a while for the RFP process and to design the fire trucks. So that happened. And then in March of 20, we went out for RFP, and those fire trucks are now being built and to be delivered in April. The next piece is, as most of you are well aware of, that lovely bridge that goes from Williston to Shelburne, which we goes over the Muddy Brook. We have $900,000 of debt in there, which is approved by the voters in March of 2020. And that should be constructed this year. And the last piece is some short-term debt for $100,000 for the fire department roof. So as you know, that building is still fairly new, but the asphalt shingling is not holding up. So there were several quotes received, and we have decided to re-roof it with a metal roof that'll last 50 years. So that's 100,000, and we're looking at short-term borrowing with that 5 or 7 year borrowing for that. Capital projects. Now that looks like a really big increase at 37%, and it is. And that was really a lot of working with all the department heads to see what projects we could defer, what projects we could fund with a little less money. And most of our capital projects, people think, oh, capital project, you go out and buy a dump truck and that's your expense. But what the town does, and it's really great planning, is for many of the ongoing costs. So, our dump trucks, our large equipment, our police vehicles, we fund those incrementally every year to build up a savings. So when we need to buy that big $110,000 dump truck, it's already been paid for by the taxpayers over a period of time. So we don't have these large increases in our capital expenditures. So, we, in an effort to, keep the budget increase from being high, we really took a hard look at all the capital projects. But at the same time, we made sure that we were still funding what we needed to fund in order to replace things when they needed to be replaced. So if you want to go on to the next slide, we will talk about proposed operating expenses. And this slide shows you the percent by, I'll say, function of the town, but I'm going to talk to you about a few of the increases or decreases within the town's budget. So for the first time this year, really a small piece of the pie, but it's different and people aren't used to seeing it, is the cemetery budget. So this is really just an accounting change. The cemetery used to be in a fund all its own, and we used to have a subsidy, but the cemetery operations are really part of the town general fund. So that just recognizes bringing those cemetery operations back into the general fund of the town, and eliminating the subsidy that used to be in the public works budget. Capital expenditures and debt, 13% of the budget and all. We talked about those increases and decreases just a few moments ago. Administration, within there is the finance department, which is showing a 12% increase this year. But a lot of that is the fact that the voters may remember we decided to segregate the clerk treasurer function. So the treasurer is now an appointed position and resides within the finance department. So it's a matter of just moving wages from the clerk to administration to finance. So not a real increase in the budget overall. Open space preservation is only 1% of our budget, but it does represent a 15% decrease from last year. And again, that's what's represented is the Affordable Housing Fund, the Environmental Fund. And again, is still wanting to fund those things, but we just funded them with a little less this year to help keep the tax rate as minimal as possible. Outside services, 5% of the budget, but actually represented a 7.6% increase over last year. And in there is $34,000 for the town share of a fee to the Chittenden County Public Safety Authority. And this authority is a municipality, and its purpose is, and the town of Williston has been involved with it for several years, and its whole purpose is to look at regional dispatching to hopefully help the towns in Chittenden County Fire, Police reduce their dispatching cost and provide more efficient dispatching through through one entity instead of everybody sort of doing their own. Let's see, Parks and Recs, 4% of the budget, but actually has a 14% decline from last year. And that is primarily about in regards to the position that I talked about earlier, that in an effort to increase opportunities for town residents, we had created an FTE to help do more programming because we have a one-person department for Parks and Recs. And that position has just been deferred, and hence the decrease. in the budget. And I am good. Well, I'll talk one more thing. Planning and zoning, 4% again of the budget, but they also had a 7% decrease in their budget. And most of that is due to consulting services. Many of you have probably seen in the paper, heard that we are working with a consultant to help with our growth plan and form-based code, especially in the growth area. So we just, that's, one-time cost, and it's less this year than last. So I am, if you want to advance to the next screen. So we try to, like every municipality, I'm sure, we try to not rely on property taxes any more than we have to. So other sources, most people know, is our 1% local options tax, and it definitely provides, this year we have $3 million in the budget. It provides the largest source of income for us to offset expenses, but we have impact fees, post-town fees. Those are fees that we get from Casella and the solid waste district based on tonnage of, I'll say, items processed through those facilities. We apply for any federal and state grants that we can to help pay for expenses or capital projects. And then, various user fees, they're the smallest piece of that, but and that those are simple things like your dog licenses, your marriage licenses, your passport fees. Even though we're not doing that one, we hope someday to get back to that. So if you would like to go to the next slide.
I think I'm up
Back
now.
to you.
Shirley. But back to me, I get the
Back to
revenue
you.
side. So thank you, Shirley. So as Shirley went through the expense side, to balance the budget, we have to look at the revenue side of the budget to make sure both of those are in agreement. So as we developed this FY22 budget, a primary focus was the revenue side to create that balance. COVID-19 has affected a number of revenue streams for the town. And when I look at this, we'll get to a pie chart in a couple of slides, but there's really three primary areas of the town's revenue side of the budget. There's the property tax revenue, the local option tax revenue that Shirley mentioned, and then kind of everything else, the town fees and other income that make up the rest of our revenue pie, if you're visualizing it here. So an impact of one of these big three areas would be significant in any year, in any budget process. But this year, we're looking at significant impacts to all three of these budget areas. So that added another challenge as we work through developing this budget during COVID-19. So we're hopeful the positive news about COVID with vaccinations moving ahead will continue as we go forward here. But as we put this budget together, we had to take a conservative approach based on the information we had at the time. So I'll look at each of these areas in a little more detail here. And the first is the local option tax. We use information in our modeling to predict a $25,000 reduction in our local option tax revenue for fiscal year 22. And how we did that is we typically budget using a 3-year rolling average to come up with what we think the local option tax revenue will be each year. We used information from March to December when we were in COVID last year to help us determine some trends in modeling to help predict what this would look like moving forward, the best we could with the information available. So good news, our sales tax revenue was expected and a little greater than budgeted during this period that we examined. But on the other side, our rooms and meals tax was significantly lower for the receipts we collected. So our financial model scales back this rooms and meals tax revenue quarterly in FY22, hoping that it's going to improve each quarter, looking at some historical averages. So you kind of blend that all together, and that's how we came up with a $25,000 revenue reduction on the local option tax side, which we've said every year can be a very volatile source of revenue where there can be a lot of swings to it. And we do our best to predict what we're going to take in that piece of it. Next, I'll look at the user fees, investments, and other income. Overall, there's about a $93,000 reduction in this revenue area for the town. There's a few significant items of note. We're not sure about passport services moving ahead that the clerk's office has offered for a number of years. We'll be able to offer those to any extent in FY22. So we budget a significant decrease in that revenue of about $70,000. In addition, our investment revenue has been much lower this year due to the economy. And this is town funds that are in CDs and money market accounts. So based on the current interest rates and the path ahead, we had to budget about $64,000 lower in this revenue stream. With both of these are offset a bit by an increase of about $75,000 for recording of legal documents predicted. This is tied a lot to the real estate market right now with home sales and also a lot of refinancing that's going on as well. So next I want to look at the property tax and the grand list. As I mentioned earlier, the town assessor advises the budget using a flat grand list due to the current economic climate. This is a big shift. And Williston's grand list has grown about 1 to 2% for most years for the last 20 years or so. The grand list will be finalized in the spring of 2021. And as I mentioned earlier, that will be used by the select board in setting the tax rate, probably in late June or early July for FY22. So I know I've kind of thrown a lot out there, and the thought is how are we addressing all these revenue stream changes in this budget you're looking at and voters are considering in March. You'll see the use of the unassigned fund balance for property tax relief was increased about $76,000. And our expenditure decrease of about $100,000 has helped to offset these revenue decreases. Those are some larger components of it, but as you drill into the budget and the details, you'll see there's a lot of accounting and numbers and thought that went into creating this budget and in a fiscally conservative approach, especially on the revenue side as we prepare for FY22. And I've got a chart I'll show, which just visualizes what I described. With these kind of 3 main revenue cost center areas, the property tax at about 50%, our sales rooms and meals tax about 25%, and everything else making up the little pieces of the pie for that last 25% of the town's revenue it typically takes in. So I'm going to toss it back to Shirley here to look at the tax rate in a little more detail for us.
I'll just say that the pie charts are very helpful, nice diagrams. And so we'll have about 5 minutes to talk about the impacts on the tax rate.
Thank you. So I just want to mention that the select board's direction was to keep the tax rate flat based on the current economy and what was happening, and just not sure how long COVID would go on and what would taxpayers and businesses, what would happen at the end of this, what happens after, there's no federal government money coming in. So a decision was made to keep the tax rate flat. So that's what we did for this year to hopefully help taxpayers offset some of the other, loss of wages or financial impacts they're experiencing because of COVID. Do you want to advance it for me, Erik? So this is just a chart. It shows the tax rate history over the last 5 years for Williston. So, and this is the value of the home is $100,000. So on $100,000 home over 5 years, you've experienced a $12 increase in your taxes. And I think, the town is really concerned about maintaining and improving our service while at the same time minimizing the financial burden to the taxpayers. So if you would flip it ahead one more, Erik. And over the 13 years represented in this chart of the tax rates, the tax rate has increased 0.075%. And I think that just goes to reflect the financial management of the select board and town manager, and again, working to maintain services and improve services while keeping financial expense for the taxpayers in mind. And then the last screen, probably many of you have seen this before. Since I'm still, I've been here almost 2 years, I can say that Williston I've seen this chart for 3 years and has continued to be the second lowest tax rate in Chittenden County. And I think that's something we're very proud of and makes Williston, affordable place to live. And I'm going to shoot it back over to Terry.
Thanks, Shirley.
Can I break in for a second, Terry? I just wanted to say if anybody has a live call for us, I just wanted to say the number is 802-862-3966. And I'm gonna also offer you all up, if you're watching this at another time, please feel free to call the town offices for more information on any of these numbers. Shirley Goodell-Lackey is the Finance and HR Director. Erik Wells is the Town Manager. And back to you, Terry Macaig, Select Board Chair.
Yeah, thank you. So you'll find a couple of additional items on the ballot this year that ordinarily are not there. They're usually voted on at the town meeting, but since we're not going to be doing an official or a town meeting that would allow us to do much of a vote, you'll see that Article 1 will be to set the dates for the tax payments, as usual, August 15th, November 15th, and February 15th. And Article 2 will be to accept the annual reports of the town officials. And you should be getting a copy or an opportunity to get a copy of the town report in a few weeks. So we're going to be doing as usual for balloting. You'll be able to ask for an early or an absentee voting ballot. You can request one by an absentee ballot by contacting the town clerk. The ballots will be mailed out around February 10th when they're available, and a few of the options to return the ballots. We will be providing a prepaid envelope for those who requested an early ballot. We have the secure drop box behind the town hall, which was greatly successful in November. Or you can come to the Armory and vote in person or return your ballot between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on March 2nd. So in-person voting for March 2nd will be using the COVID safety protocols that we used in November, and masks and social distancing. So Erik, I'm going to toss it to you to wrap up the conversation.
Thanks, Terry. And I just want to close this morning with giving folks watching at home some options to learn more. We've provided an overview of everything this morning. If you want to visit the town website, we'll have a page on building the next few days that will have our complete budgets, a full detail, both the operating and capital budgets to review. And we'll also have the annual report, a sample ballot, and the town meeting warning going on that page as things are finalized over the next week. And as Terry mentioned, we've got the public information hearing on March 1st over Zoom. We'll also be having another hearing on February 16th during the select board meeting on Zoom. And you can watch find the link and the time for that as we finalize those details. And as Stephanie mentioned, questions are always welcome and encouraged to town staff. Myself as the town manager, Shirley as the finance director. Reach out if you have questions on anything, but before you vote. Oop. I can end the slideshow there. So that's all we had today, Stephanie.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to Town Meeting TV ongoing coverage today of Williston's budget and ballot items. And you can find this and more forums at www.ch17.tv. So thanks everybody.